there's something interesting about sort of maybe there's a rebalancing in the skills conversation that traditionally, and this is a generalization, but traditionally organizations would be developing skills for the business. So this is the skills that we need for our workforce, however configured, to face the future, to compete, to thrive. And that could be skills for revenue growth and profitability. It could be for efficiency. It could be for culture and communication. There's never one answer, as you said. But I think there's something kind of interesting now with the way that there's a bit of a rebalancing, perhaps. And now the relevance of skills for an individual is perhaps rising in popularity and balancing a little bit about the skills relevance for the organization. And what does that mean about understanding the context for an individual, but also about the portability and that sort of career growth, lifetime learning, you might call it. So these are skills for me and my career, as well as skills for the organization's benefit. And there's an interesting sort of, I suppose, perhaps there's a bit of a tension sometimes between the relevance of individual skills for me, because it's important for me, and how those skills are then supported and nurtured in the organization. Is that dynamics shifting, in the way that you work with your customers as well?
Yeah, like I say, it very much depends on the maturity of our customers. If they have a mature skill strategy, then they are starting to embrace the talent mobility that we read about and really aspire to, where people are organized based on projects, or if their particular role has 20% of loose time, they are then pulled into a project that accentuates their skills, and they can start to identify the needs and wants for their passion projects. Many of our customers that we work with, it's not about that they're immature, but there's a real focus on the compliance element of making sure that they are compliant, because of the value that is associated to that is so much higher in terms of the risk, let's say, than the continual advancement or identifying the skills gaps within an organization. So it really depends, which is a rubbish answer, and I'm sorry I can't be more definitive. But obviously with our customers, we've got such a scale of enterprise to mid-market organizations. It really depends on the size of the team as well. And that's generally what I would say is lots of the aspirational elements that we talk about as an industry in terms of talent mobility, moving away from roles and to focus on skills, they are so reliant on a large team and a connected team across multiple departments. I've worked in the industry now for nearly a decade, and one of the main kind of pain points that you would say from a commercial perspective is small team, big dreams. Right. And that is continuous in the L&D industry. We work with organizations that may have 5,000 people but have 2 or 3 people in the L&D team. And that ratio to me, regardless of how wonderful and amazing those 3 people are, seems kind of insane. Like you mentioned at the very beginning, that the growing needs of an organization on learning and development to now cover a wider spectrum than ever and be better and stronger at absolutely everything. I feel like we put ourselves under quite a lot of pressure within the learning and development industry, when actually the needs have got wider and wider and wider, and it's great. We want to aspire to be able to fulfill those needs. But we also kind of need to put the mirror up and go, you need to help us and support us to be able to get it too.
Yeah, it's a good point, isn't it? Because it's very easy to say, well, the industry should be more like this, and we should all be better in these ways that I think are probably quite well rehearsed in a lot of the commentary, and and Fosway's research would support it and perhaps define some of that. I think one of the areas that I find interesting is the sort of there's something that feels important about relationship building for learning and development. This is a kind of skills area for L&D, I guess, in order to support that sort of strategic development in the business, whether small or large. And there's a couple of areas of relationship development I think that feel really important. I think you sort of described them both a little bit as you were talking, but I think there's something about building relationships with those around you in the organization. If you're in a small team, you can't do everything, so you need to work with others. Partnering, you might call it, and relationship building with those that can support you and help set that direction. I think there's something really important about kind of audience and user or learner relationship building as well. That can be research based, it can be informal, but I think the more confident you are from the strength of those relationships, it helps you then work through priorities, work through communication on both sides. I don't know if that makes sense in in your experience, yourself as a professional, but also as a in your customer success role.
Absolutely. And I think of course I'm going to say this because it aligns with my experience, but I think actually the people that we work with that are really excellent at more and I want to say mature rather than advanced, but more mature in their thinking towards skill strategy, generally have a mixed experience. They're not L&D or HR lifers. They've come from a different industry, they've come from a different role. I was talking to one organisation yesterday, and the person we were talking to mentioned that he worked at a large consultancy firm, and because of his role within kind of L&D, he managed to know more partners than the majority of partners at a large, and the partners are the kind of kingmakers in the organisation. So for them, it was a fantastic overview and be able to get insight into various parts of the business. And I think that is so important to be able to win the hearts and minds of this is important. One of the big challenges I would say that many of our I say customers, but I think anyone in the industry, is that you have to fight with your comms team to get out the communications to say this is really important. And we hear throughout my career in the L&D industry is, but comms are sending something out next week about the new lunch menu in the canteen. We won't send this out about X, Y, Z. And it's that gravitas internally, which I do think is changing because of, you mentioned the disruption within the world, but it's also the skill set of widening, of being slightly more self-sufficient, of there are now so many tools available. We've just been using Canva. I've started to use it I help run a basketball team outside of work, and I've been putting together social media templates for it. And it is absolutely incredible in terms of things that I would have done 10 years ago and taken me 2 hours, I can do in 2 minutes. And we've actually started to adopt using that at work for some customers and putting together what I would like to think are really fantastic promotional videos or user guides using a tool like Canva. Whereas I remember when I was at university, it was Final Cut Pro 7 certified, and I sat and did 2 days worth of course, and I don't remember any of it now, but I remember thinking I was really good at video editing. And I think it's that kind of self-sufficiency that is very important within a lot of L&D teams, because if you can prove that you can do something at a small scale with the small team, like I mentioned, then it starts to position the art of the possible. Yeah. Of actually, if you gave us this marketer or the communication resource, we'd take this from kind of an 8 to a 9. So you're completely right. I think the age-old discussion within the L&D industry has been, we are order takers. And I think the only way that can change, and I do feel like that is very much changing based on some of the conversations we have, is to be able to go into many meetings with 2 ears and listen as much as possible and make sure that we're understanding what the value we can provide, but also having that curiosity to say, but things can be better. We don't have to just hear that this is the way we want to do something, and come armed with the resources to be able to change someone's heart and mind to again, bring the maturity of an organisation through.